Welcome back to another video. Today we have an iPhone XS Max that came in with no touch. Customer dropped it off the other day, and I noticed the first day when we were just going through the diagnosing stages, I noticed it had touch momentarily, and then all of a sudden touch disappeared. Yesterday it had touch, and it also disappeared, and then this morning it had touch, and then right now before the video it disappeared. There's some kind of loose connection between the bottom board, the top board. Could be a broken pad, could be a pad that we need to rebuild, could be a broken interposer. We don't know. So let's go ahead and just dive into the video and let's try to figure it out. So I always like to start with a visual inspection, and I noticed that here on the bottom side of the board, I noticed that we have a bend. So I'm gonna pay very close attention to this bend. I'm gonna reference the other side as well. This side, not so bad. Sometimes a lot of the previous 10 series that I work on, when you wiggle the logic board, you'll notice that you can see the bottom of the gold interposer separate from this bottom layer over here. That's not the case or issue, either on both sides. So my goal is to dial mode the touch connector and to see if we get any open lines. So if we count over from the top row, 6 pins over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We do have a reading. But the problem is that sometimes we have a reading on pin number 18 and sometimes we don't. I've already tried verifying continuity from the actual pad to the pin, and we do have continuity. So pin number 18 is the line in question. So it goes to a cap, to a filter. Let's click on the other side of the filter, and we should have a test point on the bottom. And then on the top board bottom side is where we should have our last 2 connections. One connection goes to the CPU, although I highly doubt that we have a disconnected CPU on the pad AP18. So let's go over to the racer pad and racer to AOP, a pad 289. We're supposed to get a voltage drop reading of 0.347. And this is the actual reading that sometimes is there, sometimes is not. It just depends on when it wants to give us a reading. So it could be because of cold solder joints, so it could be because it just needs a reball. We don't know. It could be a broken pad. We just have to figure it out. Let's go ahead and split this board. What do we have here? A bunch of broken pads. So as you see, we have a bunch of broken pads. So we just have to figure out what lines are important, which ones are not. But essentially, this is the issue that we're dealing with. That's why we have intermittent connections. So we start to pay attention to this area. We'll notice that all of these pads over here that are broken, fortunately, we got a little lucky. It's ground, so we don't have to rebuild any of these. If it would have been a little further along to the right, then definitely. All of these pads that you see along the bottom over here are also ground. There are a few over here, and I'll show you in ZXW right now. There's a few over here that need to be rebuilt. So as soon as we zoom in, this is the general area where we have to rebuild a few pads on the bottom side and on the top side. But before I rebuild, I just prefer reballing. So let's go ahead and get rid of some of these brown pads. And since this is in this generation of series, it's low melt, I'm just gonna go ahead and wick. So we'll remove some of these guys over here. Now we're dealing with the top board bottom side. Same thing we did to the bottom board. We just have to wick, get rid of all of this. The pads need to be nice and flat. When we sit it down on top of the bottom board, everything's gonna solder evenly. To me personally, I don't know, this board looks like a China refurb, because I'll show you why in just a second. I've never seen, or I've never noticed, splitting an X that the tape has never been peeled off, like the tape that goes in between here. And it's looking like no one has ever been inside the phone, but there's no glue around the PMIC. I was able to lean it off the edge of the table, peek in, and see that you can clearly see the balls under the PMIC. Anytime I've done a replacement, PMIC replacement on a 10 series, it's always had underfill. You can actually spot a couple coils that don't have underfill by it, but the other ones do. I don't know. Maybe I'm just paranoid, but I've never noticed that there's no glue around the PMIC at all on the 10S Max. So we'll go ahead and wick this. Let's just clean this up real quick. Take this off is going to give me an issue with reballing. I already know. With laying it down, sometimes it gets stuck. Make sure we don't have any spacers that are stuck on here, because I do not use spacers. The only pads that look a little oxidized are just the ones on the corner over here, but either way, I still go over the bottom board and the top board with this. Wherever I can't get to with that tool, I'll just kind of use my tweezers. All right. Let's clean our surface area first. Go back over one more time. All right, let's bring the XW and see which ones we have to rebuild. So starting from this one, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, so we don't really need to rebuild that, and we wouldn't need to rebuild all of these as well, because there's also 4 other lines, which are all the same line, and as well as the other one. Essentially, we probably just need to rebuild like 3 pads. So 1, so that third one is fine. Let's move this down so you can see what I'm seeing. So that's the pads right here. We can count these first 3, 1, 2, 3. Look at our board, those 3 are intact, and then we have the next 4 or 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After the 5th one, let's double check. The ones that are broken are just after the 3rd one. We can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And yeah, so we can confirm right here, looking at the pads that we need to rebuild, are going to be pad 289 and 291. So 289, which was the racer line, and then 291. So that gives us a clear indication of why we kept getting a well, and then we would get a general reading with around a voltage drop around the 0.300s. So let's go ahead and rebuild this guy. So it's gonna be 5 and 7, counting it from the bottom row. This is just the way that I do it. This is the way I prefer to do it. In this industry, I don't really believe that there's a 100% right way to do it. What I mean by that is that it works 10 different ways. You've got some technicians that scratch and join a big circle to gain access to more of the surface area, but sometimes you can easily damage it. So I don't go with that method. I just take a Wiley solder lug. I tin the solder lug. So I'll move this out to the side. We'll tin one side of the solder lug. Add a little bit of flux. All you want to do is tin one side, kind of hold it down. That's it. Let's grab a little bit more paste. That's it. So now we can take these two little guys, put it on pad 5 and 7 from the row that I'm working on. Pad number 5, we've already got some tin on there. And then pad number 7, simply grab my iron, and push down. Position it in the middle, line it up where you want. And that's it. Last pad, push down. There's one end of a tweezer. And that's it. Let's clean this off. Main thing you want is for it to be sort of centered. All right, so let's get some solder mask on there. So just to show you that this method does work, I will get a reading. So let me cure this real quick. A little bit of hot air, a little bit of UV. I find that if you use this method and you apply hot air and UV, it cures better. Pretty much, it just cures better. I tried it without hot air and just the UV, and sometimes that's when you run into problems. You could also lather this and put it in coats, put a thin coat, cure it. What happens with UV is that you end up having like a thick layer at the bottom. By the time that your UV light tries to penetrate to cure the bottom, the top is solidified, so the light can't penetrate the bottom. We just need to scratch enough off so that we can make sure we have a good connection. That's good enough for me right there. Let me get my multimeter on the screen and then we'll verify a connection. So we are in dial mode and we will verify that we have a reading on those two pads. You can use any ground that's over here. Red probe on ground, good connection, good connection. That's all it takes. So let's go ahead and get this board joined back together. I'm going to put UV solder mask around all the other locations where we have just ground, just for good practice. Let's put this back together. Gotta get these clips on. Got our top board ready, pads restored. All right, now that we're getting a little bit up to temp on the preheater, maybe around 110, 106 actually, I'm gonna put a really thin coat of flux. That's all we need, just a nice little thin coat. Let's go ahead and place our top board on there. Let's get this aligned. That's good on that side. I'm happy with that. Push my platform down a little. Checking every side. Push this over just a little bit. Moving the temperature up to 185. We'll give this time to pretty much solder itself back together. Waiting for this part over here to close and seal. You'll see how this is sitting slightly up the top board, and we're waiting for it to become a little bit more narrow as far as the spacing in between. You might be able to catch it if I point my spotlights at the board. There it is, it's about to close. So the main area I like to check is right around the inside next to the SIM tray and make sure we have a good connection. That's where you have some of the touch connections as well. So everything looks connected there. Let's test for touch. We now have the board inside of a donor housing. So we're gonna do the prompt to boot. We're just gonna plug in our lightning cable. All right, let's wait for it to fully boot. See if touch is restored. Drum roll. And we have touch. Nice. We were able to just rebuild those two pads, although it looked worse than what it was. I mean, there was a bunch of ground pads that were broken, but all in essence, all we needed was those two pads to be restored, and now we have touch working back again. So another day, another happy customer. Appreciate everybody who made it to the very end of the video. If you're having a similar issue like this, don't hesitate to reach out on social media. You can send us a DM and we'll get right back to you. But always let us know exactly the details of what's going on with your device. And for mail-in repair, just visit the B2B form or mail-in form on the website. I've got a lot of work to do for the rest of the day. Just wanted to get some content out to you guys. But I'll see you guys. Peace. Later.